daughter told me that the little window down here hides anything in the lower right, so I'll try not to show things in there. So we are back to AC134-2, and we're on the problem C in the book. Let me pop that up here. Problem C is, let me enlarge it for you. Problem C is find customer number, name, amount paid, and balance for all customers whose amount paid is 0 or whose balance is 0. So don't worry about the condition yet. Let's just get number, name, amount paid, and balance. Then we'll worry about this part. Okay, so I bring up, I'll do this from scratch here. I had started this. So I create a query design, and since the information is just from customers, I don't need anything about the representatives. So I double click customer and I'm done. I don't need the other table. And I get their name, double click. Oh, their number and their amount paid and balance. And just to get it in the order that they wanted in the book, I'm going to put customer number first by clicking there in the gray once and then clicking and dragging that to the left. So number, name, amount paid, balance. And before I worry about the criteria, I'll just run it. Yep, I get that information. Now I'll go back to design view, just click on the triangle. And then, let's see here, where the criteria is amount paid is 0 or whose balance is 0. The or is very important. So I go back to here and put a 0 in the criteria for amount paid. And since it's a or, I put the 0 for balance in the other row, not on the same row. And that's it. Let's see if I get people that have either a 0 amount paid or a 0 balance. And I'm going to enlarge this so I can just see that full title. And that is it. Let's check the query just to be sure I've got it right. Number, name, amount paid, balance. Got that. Amount paid is 0 or balance 0. And I'm going to save that as C, amount paid or balance of 0. And just to check whether that's the right answer, I could always open up my customer table and just see, are those the only two that have a 0 in amount paid or a 0? Yep, and I see there's one with a balance of 0 and one with a amount paid of 0. So never hurts to go back and check the table just to confirm, yes, that's the information I should have gotten. And closing it and going on to the next one. Now this one here is a parameter query. Well, let's just figure out the, they want to see all fields in the query result. That's the first part to worry about. Let's just get that part, and then we'll figure out the part about getting a zip code. The easiest way to show all, let's do a create, query design. It's the customers again. To show everything, just the little asterisk. Here, in this case, the asterisk means show all the fields. So if I run it by clicking Datasheet View, there I see everything about customers. Then I can go back to Design View and add a specific field postal code. And criteria is something I want to ask. And remember, the criteria is in square brackets, is please, is the prompt that will show up, please enter postal code. Now, to know what postal code works, I have to actually see what's available. I'm going to open the table and see that postal code 19363 should show somebody. So I'm just going to now try that. 19363. Just so I do get results. It's already correct, but putting in a valid zip code makes it a nice way to test it. If I run it,
Would you put in the box? I can't see it.
oh, I just entered the line, please enter postal code in square brackets. And that becomes the prompt for when I run the query. So I could just have postal code question mark, I like to use the word please because computers often sound very mean when they don't say please to you. They make you feel very stupid, especially Access and its meaningless error messages. And that's what will pop up because it was in square brackets. And if I don't know postal code, I'll get 0 results, but don't panic. That just means that criteria wasn't met. I can always go look at design view, say yes, you did the correct thing. Customer star, show everything, add the postal code. It doesn't matter whether that's showing or not, or whether it's showing twice. It didn't say you must not let postal code show twice. And that one's done. So I'm going to save that one as D parameter query. And it shows up over there in my query objects. Closing it now, going on to the next one. A cross-tab query that groups the total of customers' balance amounts by postal code and supervisor number. Well, let's see if we can do that. It shouldn't be that hard. So I start a create query, and I'm grouping, and I want to see customer balance by postal code and supervisor number. So I'm probably going to see the customer name, balance, postal code, supervisor number. So let's try that. Customer table. Let's look at their name, balance, postal code, and supervisor number. And to make it a cross-tab query, let's just go up here, query type cross-tab.
What was the fourth one?
Supervisor number.
Oh, I think I'm missing one. Oh, just put customer number too.
No, I just put name, balance, postal code, and supervisor number.
Oh,
Because they wanted a cross-tab, groups the customer balance amount by postal code and supervisor number. So balance amount, cross-tab, that will be, I can make that a row heading, and I can group by let's see, that might be all I need. Let's make this a column heading and a column heading. Let's see how that shows up. Oh, I forgot a value option. I guess this is the value. This becomes the row heading. There we go. So balance, let's make sure I got that right here. Oh yeah, customer balance is the value, postal code and supervisor number become columns. So choose crosstab. Balance is the value that's being compared to postal code in the row heading, supervisor number in the column heading, and let's see now if that shows up.
Postal code should be in the column.
Oh, okay. Well, let's try that.
Not the
Maybe I'll read that error a little more carefully. You can't specify group by or where in the total row for this column.
You need to put a value of whatever crosstab put the crosstab value on. So balance, we need to put the group by as the value.
I think it's a group by section. What? Yeah, it's.
Did you get it to work?
Oh, that.
What did I do wrong here?
Cross the total for balance needs to be not group by because this crosstab is a value, so we need to put some sort of function.
Oh,
I don't know what the book says we need to put, but
let's do average. Let's see what happens. Okay, so we'll do the average balance. Oh, total of customers' balance amount. So maybe they meant sum. Maybe I was reading that. I was thinking just the balance. Maybe total they meant sum. So let's change that from average to sum. I think that's what they may want here. There we go. So here again, here's how we did it. We made it a crosstab query which added this row crosstab. There has to be one value, one column heading, one row heading. Postal code and supervisor number become the column heading and row heading. And I don't think it matters whether one is one or the other. But what was happening is in the balance, we need a function in the group by. So the sum is the same as the total of their balance. And in the cross tab, that becomes the value in the middle cells of the table with a column heading of postal code and a row heading of supervisor number. And viewing that, I'm not sure how useful that is. I guess I can see that supervisors numbers 29 has specific zip codes with sums of balances. Maybe if you stared at this long enough, you could figure out some association with zip codes. This one has the most balances, so maybe this is our most customers coming from this zip code. And that's the kind of thing that as you analyze lots of data, these crosstab queries help you maybe get a little better handle on your customers. Now this one we're going to save as E crosstab query. So Control S, E crosstab query. And done with that one. Next one. Find the supervisor for each customer. Well, if I only need the number, I don't have to worry about the supervisor table. But they do want the supervisor's last name and first name. So that means I need both the supervisor and the customer table. And then I'm going to list them in the order they give me. Supervisor number, last name, first name, customer number, name, and balance. Okay, so start a new query. Showing both tables this time. Double click and double click. And if there's not a line in between them, it's probably because you didn't give them exactly the same name in both tables. Stretch them out so I can see if it come on there. Access with the new flat look, they made it very hard to grab the edges of things sometimes. There we go. Supervisor number should have a line to supervisor number in the other table. Then I select the fields exactly in the order they gave me. Number of the supervisor and their name. So supervisor number, last name, first name, and customer number, name, and balance. Customer number, double click, customer name, and balance. Now notice the supervisor number could have come from either table. That doesn't matter because the little line here, it means it's going to have the same number. So for now, I think that's everything. Let's see, are there any criteria? Oh, they do say sort the results by customer number within supervisor number. So you have to read this very carefully. What this means is we first sort by supervisor number and then by customer number, because it's customer number within supervisor number. So sorting supervisor number is on the leftmost, so that's good. And then customer number, sorting ascending within the supervisor number. So because this came first, this is adequate. And now I run it, and I see supervisor numbers are sorted lowest to highest. And within a supervisor, it goes alphabetically because that's a string. I would have probably sorted by name, but because their customer number starts with its first letter of their name, it generally comes sorted within the supervisor. And that one's done. One more check to make sure I haven't missed anything. Yep. So that would be called F, supervisor and customer info sorted. Something like that. And I can close it. And down to the last query. Oh, sorry, there's two more left. Step F, restrict retrieval to only those customers whose balance is greater than 500. So what I'm going to do, even before doing F, I'm going to click on it. I'm going to do a Control-C copy and a Control-V paste to make a copy of F before even changing it. Now you could always edit F and remember to then do a save object as, but I'm just going to call this G F with criteria. Then I can right-click design view of it. I like doing that better rather than going through the whole save as, save object as, save as, multiple clicks. I just copy paste the query, then edit it. And now the criteria is whose balance is greater than 500. Now, I'm going to let you help me with this one. What do I do with this one? I'm going to turn off property sheet. What's the answer?
Great. Go to the balance section and put
Yeah.
greater than.
Right there. Balance greater than 500. And hitting enter, it's happy with that. If it were a string, it might put a greater than with quotes around it. But since balance is a number, it doesn't need quotes. If I view this now, I'll see now that I see a smaller list, still sorted the way it was before, but for all limited to specific customers. And I can do Control S on this because I've already made a copy before editing it. That's the safest way. Don't even have a chance of accidentally saving over your previous version. So I always go list the fields they ask for, then run it to see do I get the right information, then come back and add criteria. And then that one's done. Now it's one more left. Estimate the weekly pay for each supervisor by multiplying the hourly rate by 40. Show the supervisor's first name, last name, hourly rate, and weekly pay. Well, let's get those first three. We can get supervisor's first name, last name, and hourly rate, and then we got to figure out how to get weekly pay. So create, query design, and this time it's only about supervisors. And it's their first name, last name, hourly rate. First name, last name, hourly rate, and there I get a nice view of their rate. Well, how do I get it to calculate their weekly pay? Well, yeah. We're going to multiply their hourly rate by 40. We're assuming they're working 40 hours a week, ignoring at this point any overtime. Okay, so and because that's an estimate, that's valid. So we can come over to here and click on build, the next one. No, where is that? Or is it this one? Oh, sorry, it's a right click. There we go. I could right click build, or rather than even going through the little build thing, I could just type this right in the column heading, and I'm going to put it in a larger window here so you can see what we would put there. Here's what we would put for the weekly rate. First, we type the title that it's going to show at the top of the column. Weekly pay. And a colon means, okay, now here's the calculation that comes after, that calculates weekly pay. And it's going to be hourly rate in square brackets. And you have to spell it exactly as how it's spelled at the top of that column. Hourly rate times 40. So put that at the top of that column right there.
Was the hourly rate times
40. Yep.
Times 40 inside the brackets?
No, the times 40 is outside the brackets.
Okay.
Because we're referring to the field called hourly rate in square brackets, and then taking what's in there, multiplying it by 40. Now I could as well have right-clicked and done build and put it in there, and that's the same as editing the box. So the build is what they did in the book. You could just type it right there at the top. Now see if it works by just running the data sheet viewing datasheet view, and that looks right. 400 by times 40 times 15 is around 600. So, and another half of 40 is 620. So the calculated field can be very useful. And with the bigger databases out there, your database designers can do this all the time. And we have a whole class on just knowing how to program databases and all the technology and more technical ugliness of this code. They learn how to actually type all this code. And you're welcome to take a look at that, but you don't have to. So we're going to save that as, that's H, right? That's H, and I'll call it weekly pay calculated. And that one is done. Now I'll see I have all my queries over here. If you have any extra ones laying around, you could get rid of them, like if you had test queries that you're doing. And let's just verify in the homework discussion. There was one little discussion question. If there was a field called hours, actual hours worked, instead of estimating, how would you change this? If I had a field called hours worked, the actual hours worked, instead of estimating, how would I change my formula?
Would you do times, brackets,
Yeah.
hours?
Yeah. So if there were any other field instead of 40, I could have just typed hours worked. It has to be in square brackets because that's how Access knows, oh, you must be referring to another column in this table. That's how easy that would be. But we're not making you do that. That's just a discussion question. So that one is done and ready to submit. And then we can move on to some queries having to do with a Bible database I was able to find just a little more, I think it's a little more interesting query builder, just for practice, a little relief from the book for now, a little excursion out of the book. And let's go find that Bible database. It's in the assignment section. I mean, in the access assignment section, that databases, Bible database with queries. And I have a link to that Bible database. You can simply download that, and I think it will open right up in Access if you tell it to. I'm going to open it with Access, and I'll do a save database as, because it doesn't like me using it from that temporary location where it downloads it. So I'm going to do a save as into my cs101 folder. You could have done a save as and then opened it from Access. And I'm going to call it Manning Bible Database. Now I'm going to enable content. Now it looks like a scary database at first, but there's really only two tables that we need to worry about in this Bible database. The BASV 1901, double click on that, and I see that contains a huge table of, if you look at the bottom here, you'll see how many records it has. There are 31,000 or something, 31,103 records in this table. That is the text of the Bible, and I think it includes some comments. No, it maybe not. I think it is just all the verses from the King James Authorized Standard Version. That came up very quickly, showing me that Access can handle a fairly large table with 31,000 records. I can close that, and I can open up the other database called Bible Master. And what I see in here is columns that refer to the number of book. It has a MAS book in kind of a short version of the book name, but MAS real name, I'm going to stretch that out so I can see the full title. MAS real name is the book title of the book in the Bible. So I have two tables and I don't have to worry about any of those others. Bible Master, if when I need to refer to the name of a book. Mass ID is the book number. Now let's go back to the Bible database, or the BASV, and I see that bib ID is referring to, well, no, that's referring to the book record. Here we go. Book num is referring to what is mass ID in this table, the actual number of the book, so 1 for Genesis. That's all we need to know about the structure of our database in order to get these queries. And the queries that have been requested are listed here in the assignment. First, an alphabetized list of all the books of the Bible. Okay, so where are the book names? They're in the Bible Master. So let's do create, query. The only table I need is Bible Master because that has my book names. And then I can close the show table. And MAS real name is the name of the book. I've seen that by exploring that Bible Master table. And without sorting it, I get them in the order they appear in the Bible. Going back to design view, I can say sort, and now it will sort them alphabetically. And alphabetically means numbers come first, so the first Kings of First of Chronicles comes first alphabetically. And we're done with that one. Make sure I got that right. Alphabetized list of all the books. There we go. So save that as a alphabetized book names. So remember the field? I had to explore the table to know MAS real name was the book name. I had to explore the Bible Master table. The only thing there is ascending on the sort part. And save, and that one's done. Psalm 23. Well, I want to be able to refer to the name of the book in my query. I want to get all the verses out of Psalm 23. Well, first of all, let's get something that will show us the name of the book and the text. So let's do a create, query design. I need to see, since I want to see the actual name of the book, I'm going to show Bible Master, and then the text of the verse, I need the BASV table. And look at that, it doesn't show the lines between the tables. So I have to tell it MAS ID is what's referred to as book number in the BASV table. So drag MAS ID to book num. That's telling Access how to join the tables. We'll learn later in our database tools, we can tell Access that to do that automatically without us having to tell it it's joined on MAS ID matching book number. Now, when I show my verses, I want to see the real name of the book. Double-click real name. And then we want to see chapter, verse, and the narration is the actual text of the verse. Without any criteria, I have the entire Bible in less than a second.
I need to delete a line because when I drag mass ID over to book number, I accidentally hit narration.
Oh, I think you can just right-click, delete on the line.
You can also edit relationships and delete it from there.
Something in that relationship.
I just right-clicked on the line and I got a delete show up. Are you right-clicking on the line?
As best I can, yeah.
Make sure you're right on top of the line and only,
Oh,
there we go.
oh, man, I deleted that. There's a
There you go. Okay. Now right now we get the entire Bible. So if I want Psalm 23, what do I need to do?
You put into the criteria
Yeah.
of the verse.
So what would my criteria be?
Psalms.
Yep, Psalms for the book. And
Verse 23, or
Ver-
chapter 23.
that's right, chapter 23. And let's see what we get. There we go. And to see the whole verse, I can drag and enlarge my row size. To make sure it's sorted, I can always tell it's sort ascending, but it happens to be sorted in my table. But sorting here is not a bad idea, just to make sure it's sorted in the right order. But it already was sorted, so you'll still have the right answer with or without sorted. There we go. That gives you Psalm 23. And I can go then back to Design View, review how I did that, and save it as B, Psalm 23.
I'm in a weird situation. What way to run it? That thing is great.
Oh, you click somewhere else to tell if you're done editing that 23. Down below. Just click anywhere. Yeah. Now let's see, does it feel different? Data sheet view. Go left. Go back to the design tab. Just click data sheet view.
Oh.
Yeah, and you can adjust your rows if you need to. All right. Closing that one and going on to the next one. All the verses with forms of the word thanks. This came from our fall semester. I suppose we could put spring for ours, but let's do all forms of verses with forms of the word thanks. So, create, query design, the text and the names, joining then by bib ID matches, or sorry, book num matches mass ID, book name, chapter, verse, oh, forgot chapter, verse, narration, get it in the right order here. Now, forms of the word thanks. What would I put for criteria on the narration? Thanks, let's try it. Thanks. And sorry, there are no verses that just say thanks. But yeah, I need the wild card on both sides of thanks. And then I get, after it's searching, I get 134 results. And to just see the full verse, just enlarge my columns. And this is what the Bible software programs are doing. They have the Bible in a database. When you do a search, it's basically searching through their database. About every, well, I don't know exactly how they write their programs, but I would bet you every Bible program has the Bible in some database format, because the database formats makes this kind of searching much more efficient. And that one's, I can save it as C, forms of thanks. Now, a little more challenge. This time, since these are all searching the Bible, rather than start from scratch every time, I'm going to make a copy and then modify this next one. All of Paul's opening greeting verses. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to close this. I'm going to make a copy of C by doing a Control-C, Control-V, and give it the name D, Paul's opening verses. And now right-click Design View of that one and get rid of like thanks. And now you have to think a little bit. What would the criteria be for Paul's opening verses? Yeah, he usually has Paul an apostle. But what would the opening verse be?
Chapter 1, verse 1.
Yeah, so just chapter 1, verse 1 is going to be the opening verse of any book of the Bible. And then what do I put in the same row? What would the narration be?
Star, told.
Yeah, star Paul star. He mentions his name. And let's see. And this takes a little bit of knowledge that we know he usually starts with that phrase. He puts his name in there. Now, as we then view the results here, I get a little insight on the opening verses. Notice it's always the first word. He doesn't say, hello, my name is Paul. He just starts out with Paul in the ones that contain his name. Now, there is a little bit of mystery here. Should Hebrews be showing up in this list? Some people claim that Paul wrote it, but he doesn't say his name at the beginning. So remember, this is not the definitive, these are the Pauline epistles. This is the result of the search for where his name was in the first verse. So that is, the answer to that query is Paul's opening greeting verses. And you could do a quick little search or a quick little study on how his greetings changed or were the same in many ways in all the books. Okay, so I'm going to save that as, well, I've already given it the name, right? Because I made a copy of C first, so I can just do a Control S, and it'll update Paul's opening verse query. And again, what that looked like is verse 1, chapter 1, with Paul star. All Old Testament verses containing forms of the word spring. There we go. I'm going to make a copy again of D, and I'm going to call it EOT spring verses. And now, right-click design view of that query. Well, first of all, how do we get Old Testament verses? I'll delete the criteria that was there before.
There was a criteria that I was talking about, which is Old Testament and New Testament.
Yeah, so we had to kind of remember, let's look at Bible Master again. And I see in the field MASOTNT, there's a O if it's an Old Testament, and there's a N if it's New Testament. So knowing that, I can just say, oh, just look for O in the OTNT field. Now another way you could have done this is also acceptable, is just look for where mass ID is greater than 39, since we know there's 39 in the Old Testament, and we know from the table we see that they're sorted. But I'm going to go with the OTNT version of that. So I'm going to go back to my query and add the OTNT field, so I can add the criteria of O to that, not October, O,
Star.
and no stars around it because it is the letter O. The stars wouldn't make it wrong. It would still work because it's either an O or an N in that column. But there's another criteria I need to add, star spring, star in the narration part. So Old Testament and containing the word spring, and it changes it to like, quote, star, spring, star. And I'm guessing, I don't remember how it came out, about 200? What do we get?
57.
Yep, 57 verses. Now, if you actually wanted to refer to the actual season spring, you'd have to do a little more analysis and maybe look at the Hebrew, because the Hebrew word is different for water spring versus the season spring. But that was good enough for us. We save it, and we move on to the next one. Containing the word David, very easy. It's almost that same one. So I'm going to copy F, or I'll copy E, change it to F, contains David, edit the criteria, delete the O part because it's anywhere in the Bible, and change that to David, and it changes it to, oh, sorry, not David, star David, star. And when it has star David, star, it changes it, it adds the like in front of it, and 965 verses with David in that.
Wait, now that included New Testament? Or no?
Yeah, I removed the criteria. I don't actually need that field anymore. So I could just delete that. Click in the gray and cut it. And we'll stop there. I think you're getting the idea here. The rest of them, basically I would do the same thing, just make a copy because we're just looking for different criteria. This one does the verse 3 and verse 16, starting them alphabetically. Contains God or Lord or Almighty, putting those on different rows. Containing the words Christ and Lord. Remember, when it contains, you may need to put stars around it. So we'll review that one on Monday. You have a great weekend.